Batman angle on this one. I see the thing leaning this way. The leaning video.
We're gonna go with Dutch angles for the entire interview here, like.
Well, no,
Yeah.
Batman.
call them noir angles.
Oh,
Film noir angles.
what? We're not supposed to call them Dutch angles anymore?
Welcome to Area DMG.
Welcome to the next of our press conference style interviews here at NDK 22. And introducing
Lex Lang. Hi.
Hello. What's up?
How you doing?
It's good.
I'm Marcus from Kaiju Kami Creativity by Design LLC, and
I am Sam. I am also from Kaiju Kami and Creativity by Design LLC.
I'm PJ with Nerd Feed.
Okay.
I'm Jim. This is Chris. We're from the Game Slave.
All right.
My name's Philip. I'm with AreaDMG.com and DMGIce.com.
Cool.
I'm Bo, this is JP, we're with Slick Radio.
Slick radio? Okay,
Yep.
cool. Very cool.
and we'll just go
Down, bing, bang. Okay.
Just to start off right away, what can you tell us about the Love Planet Foundation? What influenced you to do this, and where can people go to donate this? Do they have to go to events, or can they do it online?
Well, Love Planet Foundation, we started about, I want to say 19 years ago. It was originally what they call a project of another organization called the Social and Environmental Entrepreneurs. And as a project, we went out to different school districts and we did in-school programs that taught children things like world water awareness, just their own water use, taught them about diversity of culture, so you know where different foods come from, where different music comes from, taught them about mindfulness, about diversity and also acceptance of people, whether you know big, tall, short, small, fat, thin, black, white, gay, straight, trans, anything, you know, all the different categories of human being, and just teach them, you know, that we're on a big planet and it's all one planet, and that our slogan is One Love, One Planet, Love Planet Foundation. So now we were with the Social and Environmental Entrepreneurs for about 18 years, and we just got our own 501c3 determination letter, which we've applied for every year, and what that means is a lot of companies, they try to become nonprofit status as foundations so that they can not only do their own work, but that they can also donate to other causes as a foundation. And for several years we were turned down because just didn't have enough under our belt. But this year we turned in all of our projects and we were given that determination. So we were given the green light. And so now we can do bigger events like these auctions at different cons and stuff. Our initiatives this year have to do with creating media content that is the same, not exactly the same, but that's similar to the programs we used to have in the schools. So not only can we provide them for the teachers to show at the schools, but we can also provide them to the Comic-Cons to show in between panels and show, you know, we're using a lot of voice actors, some well-known voice actors, to be a part of those presentations and media things. So that's kind of where we're headed. People can go online, they can donate at loveplanetfoundation.org, or catch us at an event like NDK Charity Auction or different anime cons, comic cons, and stuff like that.
Well,
Are there any like common traps for aspiring voice actors that people should avoid?
Common traps for voice actors that they should avoid. Believing other people when they say it's hard to break into this or hard to break into that, that would be the #1 trap to avoid. And I guess that's true with any career you want to go into. There's always going to be the naysayers that say, oh, it's too hard to break into loop groups or in animation, or it's difficult to break into anime, it's all a click or whatever. Those people are somewhat jaded because maybe they've had a couple of tries at doing it, and maybe didn't have the success they were anticipating, so they felt sort of like, oh, it's too hard to do, and then they start these vicious rumors. Through my experience, if you continue, and this may sound a bit cliche, but if you continue to do what you love to do, then the universe sort of aligns itself to provide a big yes to continuing to do that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Speaking of, you said you've been doing this going over and over again, pursuing it, continuing. Personally, I've I've heard your voice since I was little watching More Greymon.
Yeah.
And now
More Greymon!
More Greymon. And now getting up to the point where your voice is associated with one of the biggest studios, Marvel. How
Yes.
does that feel from pursuing that passion from then to now and having your name associated with something that large nowadays?
Well, I can't say enough how like blessed I feel. You know, and it is really about just like really small steps. You know, it's 22 years now for me that I've been doing this. So, you know, a little small step here, a little small step there, and eventually you kind of, as long as you keep placing your attention on what your intentions are for your career or for your life, you kind of just focus on it a little bit each day and just kind of set the intention, but not be rigid with how the outcome has to look. So like, let's say my intention was to be a part of Star Wars, you know, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan personally. So I've always wanted to be a part of Star Wars. Well, early in my career, I had a chance to be on a bunch of different Star Wars video games. So like way back, like when it was GameCube, back in the day, I started doing those on a game called Rogue Squadron 3. And I started playing Han Solo. And I played Han Solo for the following 4 games, as well as playing Stormtroopers in all the games. And I kept doing that all the way until the new series, the last trilogy started, and they started having more games related to that cast. And I had the pleasure of auditioning and then receiving the role of Poe Dameron for Star Wars Battlefront 2, that video game. So my end goal really has always been to like be associated with one of the real movies, like to do my voice in a real movie. So even though I was like forging ahead with Star Wars, like I had my eye on the prize sort of to go to do these movies. I didn't know how it was going to happen. And in my career, I started getting into what they call a loop group. And basically a loop group is one that when a film is being shot, let's say they're shooting a conversation between, you know, James Caan and Arnold Schwarzenegger at a table at a restaurant. Well, they shoot the close-up shot, they shoot the 2 shot, they shoot a wide angle, they shoot over the shoulder of Caan, they shoot over the shoulder of Schwarzenegger, they have like all these different shots. And the extras that are in the background, they're all completely quiet. Even though they're in the background going, they're doing that. And the reason they're all being totally quiet is because if they were making noise and that sound was in the background, every time they cut from one shot to the next, to the wide, to the tight, to the all that, it'd be like, you'd hear all these audio cuts. So the extras are quiet. When they finished editing the whole film, they bring in what's called a loop group. And that loop group does all the background voices. The bartender saying, "Here you go, ma'am," or whatever, just like all the little incidentals, like all the police radio thing you hear, anytime there's a newscaster on television, anytime there's like a character that maybe has a mask on or something, like in the Marvel type movies, you hear that, that's a voice actor from the loop group. So I started doing looping for a loop group leader named Johnny Gitcomb, who was a real well-known loop group leader out there. And I started doing a lot of the Marvel films, starting with Iron Man 3, I believe. And I've been in every single Marvel film since then in the loop group. I also specialize in doing animal sounds and creature sounds and things. So I was brought in by him to do all the primates in the last 2 Planet of the Apes movies. So it was me and like 3 other people that did all the primates. And so, because, you know, I have a stretch of, say, 15 years of doing Star Wars games and 15 Marvel films and a variety of other things in my career, I was given the opportunity to audition for some of these Star Wars films. And because I played Stormtroopers my whole life, and Stormtroopers are in every single movie, I was hired to be part of this loop group, which had like 28 people in it. It wasn't just me and like 2 guys. 4 of us out of that, or 5 of us, a guy named Steve Bloom, a guy named David Collins, Sam Witwer, Yuri Lowenthal, and myself, we play all the Stormtroopers. And they had done a couple movies before me, but I've been in since Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and Solo also. In fact, we were allowed to kind of riff as Stormtroopers, you know, when we're doing this. And there's a scene, have you guys seen Solo yet, anybody? There's a scene where they're in the spaceport and they're pushing people along, and the Stormtrooper goes, "Move along, you know, whatever. I don't know if you remember to move along. But that was me. And they put it in, and someone mentioned the other day, a fan said, "Hey, you know, when you come to think of it, in the Star Wars timeline, you said it first. Which is kind of funny. So it's a long-winded answer, but you know, it's been about like creating the intention to do that, and then just kind of saying yes to what opportunities come up. You know, it didn't look the way I thought. Like in my mind, I was like auditioning for George Lucas or auditioning for, you know, Lucasfilm to be a specific part. But in reality, what ended up happening, same end result, but what ended up happening was that I'm doing all these other movies that's kind of building little notches on my belt to the point where I qualify to audition for the group leader. And then that audition got me onto the set where I'm doing voices for it. And the feeling of being associated with a Marvel project, like, you know, the animation like Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes and stuff like that, like being able to play a character like Dr. Doom, like for me, that is like a thrill. I mean, I'm a nerdy geek basically myself. Like I follow all the sci-fi stuff. I love Star Trek, Star Wars, you know, the variety pack. And so I'm geeking out myself. You know, I've had an opportunity to play Batman a few times in my life. You know, we all know that Kevin Conroy is the, you know, we bow to Kevin Conroy. He's the Batman for everybody. But there have been a number of us like Roger Craig Smith and Troy Baker, myself, Reno Romano, that we've played various, I call it Batman adjacent. But we've done that over the years. And, you know, like as a kid, we watched Batman our whole lives, you know. In fact, even in my not childhood, but like adulthood, I guess, I watched Kevin Conroy all the time. Like, so when I eventually was sitting in the Warner Brothers studio and I'm with a cast of people, and when Joker's grandson in the show Batman Brave and the Bold, I played Batman in a story arc that's called Knights of Tomorrow, where Robin grows up, Batman is older, and he gives his cape and cowl to Robin, and Robin then becomes the new Batman, and he's fighting Joker, and at one point Joker looks up at this ledge and goes, "Who do you think you are?" And then he says, "I'm Batman," or whatever. And so like for me to be one of the 8 guys in the world that ever said that at the Warner Brothers studios, I was just pinching myself like, how did I end up here? Like, oh my God, shh, don't tell anybody, I'm here, shh, you know. So it's a super, super thrill. That was a long-winded answer, but it's like a total thrill for me.
So, speaking of ending up here, what do you think so far of Non-DESCON 22 and Colorado in general?
Well, I love Colorado. I've been to Boulder a few times. I've got some friends in Boulder. It's so gorgeous. I mean, I don't feel the mile-high altitude, you know, shortness of breath or anything. Like, I know some people have a real deal with it. Like, they get into like, you know. But I love that. And NDK, you know, it's my first year at NDK, and I love it. But the fans are so sweet, and you know, they're more like friends than fans for me, because you know, most of the time we work alone. When we're doing anime, we're like in a booth by ourselves. So when we get to meet people who actually watch the shows, who know often more about the characters than we do, you know, they know every line, every little plot twist, every relationship, you know. So when that's going on, it's a thrill for me also to be able to like interact and stuff. Some actors, you know, they're like, get me away, you know, like don't stop me in the hall, please, you know, let's keep it moving, folks, you know. Whereas for me, I don't mind being stopped in the hall, you know, if I'm not going somewhere where I have like a time I have to be there, I'm happy to stand and talk and hang out, sign stuff, hug, whatever.
So we're kind of your family?
It is very family-like, yeah, I love it. NDK is my family, absolutely. I hope I get to come back. At the opening ceremonies, there were a lot of people that were like, this is my 22nd, you know, this is my 7th NDK in a row, you know, so hopefully we'll come back again, and if we do next year, we're going to bring all the content that we're going to be making in the interim from the charity stuff back with us and premiering some of that stuff too, hopefully.
You discussed earlier about how much you enjoy Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. Is there any way that those pieces of media have like influenced how you approached acting at all, or?
Well, you know, the only way that I would say that like those pieces of media affected my approach is they made me more aware of what's called the hero's journey. And the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell wrote a whole book about it, but it's basically an unsuspecting person gets yanked from their mediocre life and told that they have a destiny to fulfill, you know, some grand destiny of becoming, you know, a princess or a prince or some kind of, you know, ruler of sorts, and they always fight it first. They always rise to the occasion. Usually they have a mentor that happens along the way with them that ends up being killed at some point, and they have to rise above the, you know, the different dichotomy of like mourning their mentor but still staying on track with their destiny and stuff like that. Like Luke Skywalker is a perfect example of that. You know, he meets Obi-Wan. At a certain point, Obi-Wan gets killed off, and he has to fulfill his destiny in another way. Yeah. And so, as an actor, it makes me more aware of like the arc of a character. And so I can approach it, if I know I have multiple episodes of a different character, I can try to start to think like, what's the arc of this character's journey going to be? And, you know, are they doing the hero's journey, or are they the antithesis of that, like the villain's journey, you know, which is a little different than that. There's more drama, let's say, with the villain's journey. So in that way, yeah, they help. And, you know, I love watching fantasy motion pictures like Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. And so there's so many great performances. As an actor, you appreciate the nuanced performances of whether it be the on-camera people or, you know, like Andy Serkis, where he's doing these amazing, you know, CGI things, you know, mocap, and you really appreciate the little tiny touches that they put on. If you ever get a chance to see Cumberbatch as the dragon, have you ever seen that?
I've seen that clip,
He's
yes.
crawling around on
Yeah.
the floor and stuff, and it's just fantastic. It's just like, oh my God, what a, you know, cool job, you know? I hope to get to do some of that soon.
So Lex, for you being a person who does several different types of acting, whether it be in video games, anime, American animation, or even with those loop groups, how do you tackle each different ones? Because you have to take a different approach with each recording of each style.
Well, that's a great, you know, you're leading into the answer right there. It's a different style of acting for each one. So I know that when I'm going to a Western animation session, I'm sitting with a cast, and we're all reading through the entire script. So you get a feel for the flow of the show itself. You get a feel for like how the characters are interacting. So you approach it from a little more organic state of acting. For an anime or a video game, you're by yourself, you're just jumping from line to line, you're not seeing the context of the entire story. So like for anime, I might come in, you know, for Goemon, for Lupin, and they'll say, we call them loop numbers, you know, go to loop number 15, and I go to 15, and the line is, you know, we should probably leave Lupin, you know, and then I'll be like, well, what's just happened here? And the director will tell me, very basically, he doesn't go into like, you know, he was born, and, you know, it doesn't go like way back there. It's just like, he just left the bank, and they might be caught for the robbery, so they have to leave. And, you know, then you watch a preview in Japanese, so we can get the emotional content of it. And then we don't copy the Japanese, but we become aware of like what that emotional state is in the original, so we can sort of honor that original performance. And then for a video game, it's very different as well. We have like a whole script that's, you know, it can be 2 pages, it can be 100 pages, but everything on that entire script are our lines. And we usually have to do them 3 times each, and sometimes with varying degrees of performance levels. You know, I did a video game called Evolve. I don't know if you've ever heard of that game. I play a character named Torvald. He's a big Norseman, kind of half man, half machine guy. And when I went to the session, Liam O'Brien, who's another voice actor, he's also on Critical Role and a couple other big things, he was directing that day. He said, let's go ahead and we'll take care of all your spoken word stuff first, because you've got a fair amount of vocally stressful stuff. And I said, okay, that sounds good. And so we did about 40 lines that were sort of talking. And about an hour into the session, he goes, why don't we take a break, and then we'll come back and do the vocally stressful stuff. And I say, how many lines do we have of the vocally stressful? And he says, about 1,600. And I go, 1,600, okay, so we start, and like one line is get to the generator, is one of the lines. So all of the lines that are the vocally stressful stuff, they want 3 ways. So he says, do one, like there's machine gun fire in the background, so you're yelling over, you know, I want to blow your mics out, but it's like, get to the generator, like a real strong yell. And he says, now there's a melee of like aircraft and, things that are around you dropping bombs, and there's machine gun fire, so now you gotta do one about 2 times as loud. Get to the generator, like a real loud one. And then the third one is you're in a ravine, there's flying aircrafts and whatnot all above you, there's machine gun fire and everything exploding, and you gotta talk to a guy 100 yards up the ravine, you gotta scream out to him to get to the generator. So it's like, and I picked a voice that's like a real deep guy, he's like, get to the generator, it's like, it's already that voice going on. So you scream, 1,600 lines times 3 at the top of your lungs, that's like, you walk away going, okay, see you guys tomorrow. It's like you have zero voice. And so the approach to that is a little different too. Like, I know that I'm gonna have to blow my voice out, so I take breaks differently, I approach the performance differently. And then with anime, I said anime. Oh, and then with loop group stuff, it's mostly improvised. So let's say it's at a hospital or something. Let's say it's at an X-Men movie, and like they're all at a hospital waiting for whoever. All the background people, the doctors, the nurses, all that stuff is what the loop group does. Even though you don't hear it, it creates the atmosphere that, like, if you were to listen, you'd be like, oh, they actually are talking about a surgery right now, or they are talking about medical records or whatever. The good part is we get to have cheat sheets. So we might have a list of medical procedures, and we use those during the improvisation that we're doing. Okay, you're playing those 2 doctors in the back. One guy's like doing this, and he's talking to somebody, so it's like, yeah, they had a cardiac infusion, and we're looking to see, go ahead and check their blood pressure, bring me the blood panels, that you can talk and improvise. So that's kind of an improvised performance level on that stuff. So it's really an interesting career, because it used to be that each of these categories had their own fan bases. Gaming had like gaming conventions, anime only did anime conventions, all the Marvel and things was only like at sci-fi conventions, then you had Star Trek conventions, you had Star Wars conventions. But with Comic-Con and these different types of Comic-Con, especially pop cultures, just merged. So now all those little pieces are all in one place. And so for me it's great, because I've had my fingers in all those pieces all along. Now finally they're kind of coming together, and it's more exciting because my body of work seems to be bigger when it's all together, as opposed to like, oh, you did these and you did these, and that kind of thing. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you answered exactly how I was hoping.
Okay.
Do you Google yourself?
Google myself? I don't Google myself. I think I have a Google alert for when my name comes up in Google. It just sends me a little email from time to time, but I don't really Google myself. I check my IMDb to make sure that my credits are being posted up on IMDb. It's mostly correct. They've left out a bunch, and it's difficult. You can put in, you can edit, like send a request to like update your resume or whatever, but they rarely get to it. Like every once in a while they'll send back something saying, oh, we've added this directing thing to your resume or whatever. But so I think at about the frequency that anyone would Google themselves is probably.
We've talked a lot about how you tackle characters, and we've also mentioned how you've watched other people tackle, like Benedict Cumberbatch tackle the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious of how you change from the charisma and charm of Sanosuke, Goemon, or Neocortex to a guttural, instinctual thing like a demon or a creature that you so often do. What is the different takes on portraying a character versus a creature? How do you go about that?
Well, the first thing about creatures is that as an actor, just myself, I realize that it's like a different species, a different animal altogether. So there's a human being performance where like you have character, you have like what their fears are, what their goals are, like you kind of shape the character a little bit. But then there's creatures, in which case you first look at their physicality and you say, are they a big, ogre-like thing? What's their mouth look like? Do they have, fangs or teeth? Do they have jowls that are slobbering? Like, what's going on with their physical characteristics? And so that's like the foundation of like where the voice print might come from. So like something with fangs, my God, you can see, you can feel the teeth of it, right? Where something that has the very, jowly kind of thing, it right away affects like where the voice is coming from. So in that sense, you start by realizing it's a species of its own. Sometimes they merge, like I played Char Male in Guild Wars 2, and so that's a Char, this giant, creature, but he speaks English, you know, and so at that point I rely on the director to give me tips as to like what that character is about. Are they noble? Are they deceitful? Are they generous? Are they, you know, and those adjectives start to mold what that character is about. And then in terms of what the vocal print is like, generally the voice director will show me a photograph and say, what are your ideas? Unless they have a specific idea, like if we're doing something that's already been in another country, they might show me what that other country's performance is like and say, we kind of like this part of it, but we don't want to copy it. We would rather just like take the part where it sounds sort of hissy because he's a snake guy, and we'd like to incorporate that, but we don't want to get so hissy that it's like creating sibilance on the mic all the time, you know. Maybe you lower it a little and it still sounds hissy, but it's not like where you're hearing that on the mic the whole way. So, and there's a lot of, every project really is kind of a different approach. It's like a plane landing on a runway at a different airport, you know, like you approach differently and you know you've only got so much runway to land on. You know, the director helps so much. I can't, you know, accentuate it and express enough how much the director helps.
So, since we have only a brief amount of time left, I would say, is there anything you'd like to go ahead and like promote that you've just finished or that you can talk about? And where can people find you online?
Okay, let's start with that. Where can people find me online? LexLang.com. That's a good one, and all my social media links are on that. So if you go to LexLang.com, you can, you know, find my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram links. But if you don't go to LexLang.com and you go to those other places, it's just at Lex Lang. Let's see, the projects that I'm finally allowed to announce. I can't tell you what I'm doing in it yet because it hasn't premiered, but Star Wars Resistance is a new animated series that I play main character in.
Awesome.
And so for me, like we were talking about, like those goals, those dream goals and stuff like that, you know, ever since Star Wars started doing animation, even back Clone Wars and, you know, that, and then Rebels and all that, I've just been like, oh, please, I gotta get on that, And you know, Clone Wars finishes, and then the next one starts, and it's several seasons, it finishes, I'm like, ugh. But then an audition pops up, you know, and most of the time for Star Wars stuff, they don't tell you it's a Star Wars audition, they just say, here's the audition, it's a character, it's a whatever, you know, a soldier or whatever it might be. And then when you get the news, it's like, awesome, I can't tell anyone for 2 years.
Do they still use code names like Blue Harvest or whatnot?
Yeah, they still use code names. And the code name for this one was called, well, first it was called X, just the letter X. and then it was called Zero. Yeah. When I did another cool code name, when I did the Solo movie, their code name was Red Cup. You know those Solo Red Cups?
Nice.
So, what else? What was the first part of that question?
Oh, it's just like if there was anything you'd like to promote that you've finished that you can
yeah.
talk about.
Yeah, I think, you know, that show right now is my main one I'm really excited about. I also just did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime. I played Angelo. It's funny because in my script it said Angelo, but in the credits it said Angelo. And I just think maybe a Japanese person was dictating to someone else. You know, he's played Angelo. So, which is kind of funny. But that's fun. I haven't been on that show yet, and that's one I've been wanting to do. Also, Lupin the Third has a couple new installments coming up, and we're getting ready to do another new movie for Lupin. I play Goemon in that. And besides that, just, you know, trying to keep a balanced life and stay focused, stay healthy, you know, because that's real important in life. And, stay grateful, because I think, you know, what is an attitude of gratitude is the key to success. You know, wake up, be grateful for being able to breathe, being able to walk, you know, those simple things, and the rest of the day is just gravy.
So an attitude of gratitude will increase your latitude.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't heard that last part yet. That's awesome.
It can often be challenging for artists to make a living off of their work. At what point in your career did you actually find that you were going to be able to, you know, live off of just voice acting or acting in general?
Well, 22 years ago is when I took the leap of faith, stopped doing other work. But what's interesting, I was talking to someone this morning, the real interesting, every month is a leap of faith, because unless you're on a show, like I'm on Curious George, I play the doorman and his dog Huntley. It's an animated series for kids, and that one I know that like at the beginning of the season, they've got 12 episodes they're doing. I might be in 4 or 5 of those episodes, sometimes maybe a couple more. So in that sense, I know there's work coming. But every month, every single month, on the first of the month, when I look at my calendar, there's 0 jobs in that. There's nothing. So I look at the calendar and go, I need to make my entire rent, my food, my insurance, like there's a whole list of every month that you need to make. Everyone has their monthly nut, so to speak. And so after doing that for like, I don't know, probably 10 years, I finally thought, okay, well, somehow the universe has said yes, that this is a good career path for me. It always provides me either the audition or the work. And so I'm going to just go ahead and trust that that's going to continue, and I'll just keep auditioning, and I'll just keep being an actor, and I'll just keep putting myself out there, and keep meeting the people that do the jobs, and keep meeting the producers and that sort of thing, and then keep auditioning. I was also telling them I probably do about 1,500 to 2,000 auditions per year, and I do it from my home. I have a little studio at home, and I record them at home. I send them to my agent. And that might give me 40 or 50 jobs for that year, which is good. It's at least once a week, a different kind of job. But that ratio is like, 99 to 1, no job from the audition, So that's another leap of faith. It's just like, I'm just going to keep auditioning. And, on-camera actors have it a little worse because they kind of cling to that audition they just did. Like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to get it. I wonder if I'm going to get it. I wonder if But when the quantity of auditions is just so massive, it's like, okay, I'm letting that one go. I don't know. Okay, I just auditioned for a Taco Bell commercial. I just auditioned for a new anime. I just auditioned for a new video game. Forget about it, because if I get my head like, I need to have that, then I'm not present anymore in the now. And so that's, having a now moment sort of approach to life is way better than like thinking too hard about like, what if or what just happened. The flow seems to go better. Yeah, I have that leap of faith, but based on empty schedules, and the fact that it's happened. So now 12 years into it going, okay, it's empty again this month, but I feel like something will come. And there are months where like, it'll just be all auditions, because sometimes, it's always in the acting world, I think, ebb and flow. So all of a sudden you'll have a bunch of great jobs, and I'll go, God, I made all this money this month, it was great. But I gotta sock some of that away because I might have a blank month next month just auditioning, and I better have enough to cover my monthly expenses, And so that's the basics, I just try to stay positive, but like anybody, we can get down, we have upsets, we have, deaths in the family, we have illnesses, like all that stuff that is normal human being, we continue to do, but try to just, continue to, like I always tell people, even though it sounds cliche, do what you enjoy doing, like at least put an hour a week, if not an hour a day, into something that you actually love to do. And it might be paper mache, it might be, carpentry, it could be drawing doodles or whatever. But if you do that, at a certain point, you're going to have a lot of practice in that area, and you're also, if you're like an artist creating things, you can have a bunch of content that you can show other people that you've done, and that might lead to like actual work in that particular field. So just keep doing what you love.
And that's all the time we have for today.
And on that note,
Yeah, on that note.
keep doing what you love. Thank you, guys. It was nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Maya.